So we were doing verse number 8 at the chapter 14. Yesterday was Sunday, but we had classes because we had long gaps. And during the last class, what we did was very brief, very simple. It is certain symbols, certain indicators of when these sattva and rajas and tamas come into play. Because the verse number 5 said, Sattvam rajas tama iti gunaha prakriti sambhavaha nibadhnanti mahavaho dehi dehinam avyayam. So the doubt of the student was that earlier you have said that this Atma is never involved in anything. It's Udasina Vadasina. It is always Bita Spriha. It's not at all entangled in anything. Whatever activities are happening is because of the gunas. And suddenly you're turning around and saying that these gunas can bind this Atma. What does it mean? And he very nicely mentioned that the moment the sun gets reflected on a water surface, the way the chalanatmaka and other things which you see on the water surface are superimposed on the sun, because you are now beginning to look at the reflected sun, not the original sun. Similarly, the moment this whole, this karya karana sanghata, which is this body mind complex, where this chidabhasa appears and that atma gets reflected, that itself it becomes a prisoner, because it is that reflected entity that we are dealing with. Because earlier he had mentioned sarirastopi kauntiya na karoti na lipyate, and then he mentions about what are the indications, what are the qualities, what are the ways in which we can recognize the sattva and rajas and tamas. He has to define what are these gunas and how do they. And this guna is not quality in the normal sense like rupa, rasagandha. These are dispositions, and this is only paribhashika vyavahara. They're called gunas, but not qualities like he's a good boy or a bad boy. No, these are three primary dispositions which determine how we behave, how we relate to the external world, what sort of emotions we experience, what are the modes in which we engage with the external reality. So, Sattvam Nirmalatvat Prakasakam Anamayam. Anamayam means Roga Rahitam, Nirdosham, and Nirmalatvat. It's sort of Prakasaka Sukha Sangena Vadhanati, Jnana Sangena Sa Cha Anagha, He Anagha, He Nishpapa. Arjuna is being addressed that this sattva thing is nirmala, and it's prakashaka. It gives you that correct understanding of things. And you have a yathartha jnana, and you also have sukha, dukkha bhava. And rajo ragatmakam vidhi, whereas the rajas is always sort of which colors your mind. It creates two things in you. One is Trishna, the other one is Asanga. It gives you craving for having what you don't have and desire to retain what you have. That is Asanga. Trishna and Asanga samudbhavam nibadhnati. Tan nibadhnati kaunteya karma sangena dehinam. How does it bind us? By connecting us with activities. We always have a push to do. I want to do this. I want to do that. If I do this, I will get this result. That sort of a mindset. And then verse number 8 is defining tamas. He said, Tamastva jnanajam vidhi is born out of ignorance. Viparidhi pradayaka. It will always give you wrong understanding of mohanam savadehina, and it sort of makes you deluded, misleads you, gives a faulty understanding of the world. Pramada, alasya, nidra. These are the three ways in which it sort of binds us up. Pramada is what? Where you have kartabya, the mind will take you to another thing. You would like to do something else. The mind will waver. And alasya is that, you have some dimness in your physical ability. You have that sloth, inertia in the body. And nidra is obviously uparati, complete withdrawal. You want to sleep, you're not interested. There may be TV running in front of you, you don't want to watch it. There's a book, you don't want to read it. Even you don't have any much appetite for food. You are in a state of a little depression. You want to fall asleep. You want to just, people who take a lot of intoxicants are the ones who sort of go into that sort of a state. So that is how he sort of binds. Now he's again going to give us more explanation regarding how we can recognize how these three gunas work on us. And today we'll do these 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. And we'll have some summary understanding about how these three gunas act on us. Because these are not very difficult verses and there is a little amount of repetition of in Sankaracharya and Madhusudana is a little more elaborate. I am focusing on Madhusudana. If there's anything interesting, we will go to Sankaracharya. Otherwise, Madhusudana also takes all the sentences and key ideas given by Sankaracharya is taken up by him. Sattvam sukhe sanjayati rajaha karmani bharataha jnanam abritya tu tamaha pramade sanjayatyuta. Sattvam sukhe sanjayati. That sattva guna connects you with happiness. And that gives you that in that, because we are talking about attachment, we are talking about how we get trapped in samsara, how we develop a vested interest in continuing to do what we are already doing, we are good at or bad at, but we have some attachment to it. Rajaha karmani bharata. And then this particular rajas, he had already mentioned that he binds you up. How does he do it? Karma sangena, he has mentioned. He's more or less repeating it by simplifying it. He's kind of summarizing verse number 6, 7, and 8 in the verse 9. Jnanam abrityatu tamaha, that darkness, the tamas, that is essentially darkness, avidya. And it covers up your right understanding. It will give you exact opposite understanding. Like, for example, if a person is very tamasic, you will find your students or any juniors, anything, you tell him, so why don't you study? He will get back at you and saying, "Padne se kya hota hai?" Does anyone get jobs because he's a very bright student? All jobs are given because of connections. Yeah, I'm not so powerful. Can you get me a job if I study hard? He'll ask you that question. And you know immediately this guy is overcome by tamas. You'll say, why don't you look for a job? So he'll get back at you saying, so, oh really? So you have a lot of jobs to offer? How much money will you give me? He actually doesn't want to work. And you know that he's overcome by tamas. And it's very easy to understand. Then you can heal him because the Shastra will tell us how to defeat tamas. He is going to tell us. Therefore, it is very important that we recognize what particular disease we are overcome by. Then we can overcome that disease. We can treat that disease. Sattvam utkrishtam tat sukhe sanjayati. So it is that, it's when you have these three qualities or three dispositions, when can you say that sattva guna is dominating over me? Earlier we were discussing, giving that example, that you have an office where you have a 24 hours duty chart and you have three guys working there. One is sattva, the other one is rajas, the other one is tamas. There is only one table, one chair, one computer. And the computer is that mind of the person. The chair is the sarira, and he comes and sits there. Now, the tamas and rajas are not out of job. They have just gone on leave. They have a schedule. They'll come back. So these three watchmen or these three dwarapalas kind of come and take charge of our mind-body complex. So that's a particular kind of orientation. It's not a quality like anger or happiness, or no, it's not like that. This is a whole set of things together. It is a whole complex, you can say. It's a set of things together, and that is rajasika or tamasika or sattvika. So that sattvika, when that aspect dominates, because that in trigunatmika avidya, that maya. So when sattva dominates, doesn't mean rajas and tamas have completely left you, because if they leave you, then you can't even sleep. We need a bit of tamas to be able to catch some sleep. We need rest. Tamas is required. We need rajas because we need to be active. Otherwise, there'll be a lot of biological disorders in the body. Okay, and the third thing is, like, for example, there is the story, those of you have read the biography of Ramatirtha, Swami Ramatirtha. He sort of went up to Rudraprayag or somewhere. He was living alone and he studied more and more Vedanta. The professor who has written his biography mentions that he lost all interest in the external world. And this professor was amazed that he was almost behaving like a lazy person. He didn't even have any appetite or motivation to eat food or go anywhere. He'll just get up in the morning and he'll study a little. But the more and more he studied Vedanta, the more and more he understood, because he was a gold medalist throughout in mathematics. He was a science professor, went all around, gave speeches, and won hearts all over the world, especially in England. He had a great influence. But when he got into the Vedantic teachings, the original Sanskrit texts, and he read it, the more and more he read about it, the less poetic he became. And then he sort of lost interest in the external world. And so, what does it show? That, too much of sattvika, but you need a bit of rajas. You need to organize yourself deliberately. You have to deliberately remain a little physical active. You need to give yourself a bit of rest, because one particular thing 100% cannot replace all others. That is what is advised here. So here, sattvam utkrishtam tat sukhe. So when that sort of dominates, becomes a predominant force in you, sukhe sanjayati. So it sort of connects you, engages you. It like you to do things which are sukha prada. So, for example, reading a good book, sitting in a garden, on the other hand, a person who is tamasic would love to lie down in the bedroom. A person who has a lot of sattvic thing, he will say, open the windows. I can't sit in this room. It's too dark. He will clean it up. And if he's very rajasic, then of course he will try to embellish everything, and he would like to be very active. And so he will maybe study or sit and meditate or write something. There is too much of sattva in him. But too much of rajas in him, he would find this meditation and study a little boring. He would like to go out and do something. So sattvic and rajasic, like for example, our professorial job is essentially a sattvic job with a bit of rajas in it. And of course, you need the basic tamasic thing, like you need rest, you need physical rest. So sukhe sanjayati dukkha karanam abhivuya sukhe sanslesayati ityarthaha. So what does it mean? So it suppresses, it sort of pushes away. Doesn't eradicate, but it defeats abhivuya. It defeats the forces of dukkha or ajnana, that mohana. You have to include that. It sort of pushes away the same person who is very tamasic would be lying around and lazing and wasting time. If he's sattvic, he gets up in the morning, takes a bath, and wears clean clothes and reads a book, sits in the sun, takes a walk, goes to the garden, talks nicely, doesn't get agitated. That is the sattvic thing. He may not like to talk much. That is the sattvic thing. So what are the dukkha karanas? That is the rajas, the negative rajas. So it sort of removes and suppresses the thing. Sanslese, the sarvatra dehinam iti anusajyate. Whenever we are mentioning it here, because in the last three slokas, Bhagavan has mentioned that it deals with the dehin. The dehin is that jivatma which is there. Evam raja utkrishtam, and then when the raja dominates, the rajas dominates in us, that dynamic principle, the inertia of motion, utkrishtam tat sukha karanam abhibhuya karmani sanjayati iti anusajyate. It does the exact opposite. When rajas dominates, you will find, अच्छा ये वेदांत पढ़ के क्या होगा? नहीं, ध्यान ज़्यादा नहीं कर सकते हैं, बहुत हुआ. Let's do something. Then maybe that guy goes out for a jog, or maybe he would like to play games. He's very good at business, and he'll do certain things. They're very active people, rajasic people. This whole samsara runs because we have a lot of people with a lot of high rajasic energies. But when that is sattvic rajas, they are the best managers. So you have tat sukha karana bhiguya karmani sanjayati iti anusajyate. Again, dehina. Tamastu pramada valena. Then all the viparita bhavanas, the opposite vrittis, like you swim upstream. They say spiritual life is like swimming upstream. The tamasi is actually just floating downstream. It will go away from the destination, waver, drift. Pramada valena utpadyamanam api sattva karyam jnanam abritya achadya. So it covers up all the good logic, good reasoning. Kya acha hai, whatever the ishta anishta vichara, what is ishta and what is anishta. I should not do anishta, I'll do the ishta padartha. Tamas attacks us, it blinds us. It simply blinds us. It's like you are driving a bike and suddenly you are not wearing goggles or any protection. protection gear, protective gear for your eyes, and suddenly a dust particle enters your eye or hits your eye, what happens? You face an accident because you cannot see, because there is inertia of motion. And that's what the tamas does. It attacks us, it immediately blinds us not physically, it blinds our ability to judge things rightly. So there is a sudden withdrawal or a smothering of the power of our judgment. It gets subdued immediately by this tamasic thing. Viparita buddhi attacks. Achadya pramade prapta jnayamana takasya api agyane sanjayati. So, for example, there could be a book in front of you which you should be happy to read. But at that moment, that mind will be so deluded that you will make a judgment without actually referring to information which may be right in front of your table, because the tamasic thing has over dominated. So even though prapta jnana mana, whatever, you can know it, yathartha jnana you can have. The prakasatmaka sakti is there, or sattva, but that gets clouded. Then many times you would find that a reasonably good person can behave very badly sometimes when he's overcome by rajas. And then he may have all sorts of nonsensical things, like a very good person who is a little depressed, he doesn't take good decisions. That's because the tamas is dominating over him. So, so jnayamana takasya api agyane sanjayati. Uta api prapta kartabhyatakasya. And then there is something to be done. There is a doable thing. There is a target. Like, for example, you maybe have your mother or sister or brother or son or daughter, somebody is not so well and you're supposed to go to hospital. But you're watching a cricket match and the tamas is dominating. So you say, yeah, jayenge, jayenge. And you are delaying, but the patient is suffering. Till somebody shouts at you, you're just watching that match. It happens in many family situations. So that is essentially tamasic thing. Prapta kartabhyata kasya. That particular thing is there. That kartabhyata bodha is there right in front of you, but he doesn't see it. Api akarana alasya ramasyam cha nidrayang sanjayat ityartha. So it binds you in that inertia. And then Uktam karyam kada kurbanti guna ityuchyante. When these particular works, these particular gunas, these three particular dispositions are sort of hit us with different alternatives and we do these things, when that happens, somebody might ask that question. So he's explaining this. Rajastamasya vibhuya sattvam bhavati bharata rajaha sattvam tamasyaivam tamaha sattvam rajas tatha. So actually, it's not that the rajas is falling from the heaven. These three gunas are there in us because this vikara, this mana, buddhi, ahankara, all they are born out of avidya. They are all trigunatmika. So one aspect of these avidya or maya, out of which these things have been formed, begins to show its face. That's it. So never be surprised if tamas shows up, because it is always in us. Sattva is always in us, and rajas is always in us. We are sattvika, or rajasika, or tamasika, depending on which aspect is becoming more manifest, becomes more dominant as an appearance in us. And that is how people refer to us as a sattvika, or rajasika, or tamasika person. Rajas tamascha abhibhuya. That rajas, how does it predominate? It suppresses or defeats or removes or kind of subdues that alasya. So you don't want to get up. It's a wintry morning and winter is now approaching. So you are inside the blanket and it's very cold. So somehow or the other it's a Sunday morning. You want to relax, but suddenly there's a phone call. What happened? You're supposed to show up. And then it's your boss and you had promised to have a meeting with him at 9:30. It's already 8. What do? You jump out of bed and you go to the washroom and you get ready in about 10 minutes and you are driving to meet him, desperately trying to explain that you were caught up in a traffic jam and you're late by a few minutes, but you always knew about it. You bluff. Why? Because that tamas, and you discarded it immediately when you knew there is a kartabhya and I have to do it. If I don't do it, I'm going to get fired or I'm going to pay a heavy price for it. That is what he's saying, that the rajas, that immediate kartavyata, that karma, bodha, it sort of dominates and flushes out the energy, is called tamas. Sattvam bhavati bhuya, sattvam bhavati bharata. And then this sattva, when rajas and tamas both are defeated, and the same thing, the person becomes sattvika, it becomes sattva. Rajas, sattvam, tamas, seva. And then raja, when it becomes dominant, when it can defeat both sattva and rajas, then you are at a very fast pace, you are trying to achieve a lot of things. Tamaha, sattvam, rajas. The same way, when the tamaha dominates, it defeats both sattva and rajas. And now we have the secret. Here he is indirectly giving us a secret how to alter our state of mind. Now, if it's midnight, you desperately need sleep. You know that if you don't sleep tomorrow, you have to have a long drive early morning. You may make an accident, but you are insomniac. You are not being able to sleep. So you need to understand that there is high rajasic energy, and what I need to do. Maybe you will do some breathing exercise, or play some deep focus music, or drink a glass of water, maybe take a bath to relax, and so that the body sort of slowly cools down. You might sattvic thing in you by doing a prayer or sit in meditation, breathing. Body cools down, then you can let it sleep. Like a father puts the baby to sleep, you can help your body go to sleep. I mean, it's like parenting your own mind, parenting your own physical being. And that is the technique for a spiritual person. So this is what he's saying. Rajas tamasya yugapat ubhau api guno avivuya. When you are able to suppress or subdue or defeat both rajas and tamas, yugapat, at the same time, ubhau api, both these gunas means both these disposition, both these energies, sattvam bhavati, udbhavati, bardhate, then the sattikata in you becomes prominent, expands, gets the prachaya bhava, it becomes prasastha, becomes prabhavasali. It becomes evident. Yada tada sokaryam praguktam asadharanyena karoti iti sesha. And then when sattva comes, then it will have what? It will play its game, which is a good thing for us, because we are trying to get out of either rajasic or tamasic state. It will show some interest in you to maybe engage in some logical, analytical activities, or some sukha pradayak activities. You'll become satta spurtimaya, and you want to be happy and elegant and stuff like that. Evang rajopi, and rajas also does the same thing. What does it do? It asks other watchmen to leave, and it takes possession of the office. Sattvam tamascha iti gunadvayam abhibhuya udbhavati. Similarly, it defeats or subdues sattva and tamas, and rajas becomes dominant. Then you are very active. It's your daughter's marriage or niece's marriage, or maybe there is a ceremony for your son, or maybe there's a student festival in college, or some organizational work you're doing. And you have to do a lot of activities, isn't it? There is no time for you to sit and meditate. If somebody says we are doing Sankirtan, would you come? You say, no, sorry, I don't have time. Similarly, somebody says that we are having a dinner and we're going to play cards and watch cricket. Would you like to join? You said no, because you want to be Rajasic. That is the call of the hour. So, avibhuyo tada swakaryam praguktam karoti. So, what it will do, that it will immediately sort of play in you those energies. So, you would have a craving to achieve your targets, that is lipsa and asanga. Whatever has been achieved, you like to maintain, which is very good thing. The egoistic activities, and this is part of this karma yoga. If you can abandon the phalasanga or phalavhisandhi, the rajasika karya or sattvika karya, everything becomes spiritual. That is the secret. He will tell us as we move forward. Tatha tadeva tamopi sattvam rajascha iti ubhau api guno avibhuya. It also sort of suppresses sattva and rajas. Who is that? The third guy. What is his business? To blind us, push us in darkness, but it has its functionality. None of these gunas are completely non-functional, non-useful. We also need a bit of tamas, we need rajas, we need sattva. It's always good if we can have sattva dominating in us. Ubhavati guno avibhuya udbhavati bardhate. It expands. Yada tada sokaryam praguptam karoti. And it will do all its businesses. What are these businesses? Yanam abrutyatu tamaha pramade sanjayuta. And earlier he has mentioned pramada, alasya, nidra, nidravihi. So these three things it will bring as his children. So it has a big family. It has three daughters. One daughter's the son. Name is Pramada. And then another son. And this another son's name is called, what is that? It has Alasya. And it has a daughter. And the daughter's name is Nidra. So it has two sons and a daughter. And the tamas will enter us with these three children. And they will take control of us. Then, Idanim Udbhutanam Pesan Linganya Trivihi. And the next three slokas will again repeat. Earlier he has mentioned broadly what the Sattva, Tama, and Rajas do with us. But how can we quickly recognize them? What are the chinnas? What are the symptoms for us to recognize that we are overcome by either Sattva or Rajas or Tamas? These are the things we are going to discuss in the next three verses. Idanim udbhutanam. Udbhutanam means udbhutanam gunanam, three gunanam. Tesham lingani. Linga means chinna. Linga means whatever is a representative of that. Now Shiva Linga, because that symbolizes, represents Param Brahman. That is why it's called Lingam. Sarvadvareshu. So what are the Sarvadvareshu? Dehesmin prakasha upajayate jnanam yada tada vidyad vibridham sattamityuta. Sarvadvareshu. What are the dwaras? We have Navadvare Pure Dehi. There are 9 doors. This body has 9 doors. And the Dehi, the Atma, lives in this system of 9 doors. We have studied that earlier. Now, these are the dwaras are the indriyas. You have 2 eyes, and then the ears, and the mouth. These are all dwaras. And the karma indriyas also you have. So, sarvadvareshu dehesmin prakasa upajayate. So, this particular sattva, it sort of begins to illuminate and gives you that energy to have prakasatmaka, means jnanatmaka vritti. Jnana pradayaka vritti. What is that jnana? When there is consciousness, it connects with the objects of perception which is outside, and you become aware of it. That is only jnana. What is it? You become aware of it. Now, if there is this particular pencil in front of us, and I look at it, and the mind says this is a pencil, and how that happens? I'm looking at it, and then the mind takes note of it through my ears, darsana indriya, and it makes sense of what it is and for what I can make use of it, where it should be kept so that I don't lose sight of it when I need it. So that particular vritti, that is jnana paraka, it's sort of, he's explaining here. Asmin atmanaha bhoga ayatane. So the sarira is called bhoga ayatana. What is bhoga? What is bhogya? You'll ask. So what is bhogya? What we do upabhoga? Now bhoga is both sukha and dukkha. We do dukkha bhoga and sukha bhoga. How can we have dukkha and sukha bhoga if we have this body? Imagine if we don't have this body. Then we'll have a sukshma sarira. And how we experience pain will not be the same way as we experience pain in this body. That's why when we are given anesthesia, even if somebody cuts a part of our body or there's a surgery or operation, we don't feel anything because the message is not transmitted to our brain. It doesn't make sense of whatever is happening to the body. So, asmin atmano bhogayatane, in that bhogayatane, what is that bhogayatana? What is that platform for us to experience pleasure and pain? The sarira, dehe, sarveshu api dvareshu. These are the gates, all the gates. What are those gates? The indriyas. Upalabdhi sadhaneshu. Upalabdhi is what? Jnana. What is jnana sadhana? The indriya. Pratyaksha jnana sadhana is the indriyas that we have. So, upalabdhi sadhaneshu, sotradi karaneshu. Karana, here is instrument tool. And in Nyaya, there is something called asadharana karanam, karanam. But here, karana is basically instrument, tools of perception, like eyes, nose, ears, all this. Pancha Jnanendriyas, Dvareshu, Upalabdhi Sadhaneshu, even Karma Indriyas included, because you can receive something if you have hands, but here he's saying Sotradi Karneshu, Yada Prakasha, Buddhi Parinama, Visheshu Visayakaraha. You know, in Vedanta, let me first make sense of it and then we will discuss Prakasa, Buddhi Parinama Visheshu Visayakaraha. So, you know, what the Nyayikas say that you look at this pencil. This is a Vastu. This Vastu connects with mind through my ears, through the Indriya Sanyoga. So, first, what is Dravya, that Vastu, and Indriya Sanyoga happens. The eye connects with this Vastu. Then there is Indriya Mana Sanyoga. There is Indriya Mana Sanyoga. The Mana is like Anu, it's like a small thing, it moves very fast. And this mana, and then the mana, Atma Mana Sanyoga happens. With the self, it connects. That is Nyaya Darsana, by the way. When Atma Mana Sanyoga happens, then I am aware of this thing as a pen. That is Nyaya Darsana. For them, Atma is Jada. When there is a Prakasa Katmasi, Jnanatmaka Vritti happens, then it lights up. And then we are aware of it. Otherwise, it is Jada. Now, for Vedanta, is completely different. What Vedanta says is that this Atma, there is nothing called Atma, which is an object or something inside us. There is only one Atma. One Chaitanya is there, like Hatakasa, Patakasa. One space is named as the space inside the pen, the space inside the book, the space inside my spectacles, pen space, spectacle space, book space, computer space. Space is one. Similarly, consciousness is one. With names and forms, we imagine that we are different beings having different sets of awareness or consciousness. Now, how do I see the pen? For Vedanti, everything is Chetana Swarupa. Everything is Chit Swarupa. There is Jada, it's called Jada because it does not reflect that Chit Sakti, that Chit thing, that Atma, very much because it is not very Suddha. That is why we call it Jada. When there is a greater reflection, he becomes Pashu, or there is a Udvida, or then he becomes a human being, where the Antakarana is very Nirmala and there is a good reflection of it. That is our very layman's language. Now, they say that the mind undergoes and it sort of becomes, there is a parinama of the mind. So it becomes tadakara vritti. Tad akara means tadakara. So the mind assumes the form of pen. Now just think about it. You might find funny, but think about it. You are sitting in the mental meditation. Your eyes are closed. You're just thinking about the self. There's nothing in it. You open the eyes and you see this pen. Your consciousness connects with it through the indriyas, and then it modifies itself and it assumes the form of this pen. Then it has this kalamakara vritti, kalama akara vritti that happens in the mind. Then this vritti of a chinna chaitanya, this particular thing, and then you become aware that yes, there is a pen. The mind is going there, connecting with it, and assumes its form. And that is how in Vedanta they say that it's all mind getting modified with several things. And therefore, you cannot be neutral after your mind is allowed to modify itself with several things, unless you consciously try to disconnect yourself. That's why they are telling us to be constantly thinking about the Atma. Because otherwise, the mind has a tendency to connect with the external world and assume the forms which are there in the external world. They are illusory, they are vyavaharika, they are not paramarthika satya, but it sort of connects and assumes their forms and its undergoing changes. Okay. Now what he's saying, yo bhogaitane dehe sarveshu api dvareshu upalabdhi sadhaneshu, that means indriyeshu, shotradikarneshu, these are these karnas, indriyas, jnana, pratyakya, the instruments of perception. Tada prakasa buddhi parinama vishesha vishayakaraha, this is the vishaya, the mind, that jnana, that is the vishayi. It has this vishayakara vritti, it assumes the form of this pen. Swa Vishaya Avarana Virodhi Deepavad. And then, like for example, it has this, it is looking at this, and it cannot deny its existence. Like for example, when it has the Kalamakara Vritti, it cannot cover its awareness of that pen. Like for example, like a lamp, you just light a lamp, the lamp cannot hide the presence of the lamp from itself. The lamp declares its presence. It cannot hide itself. It cannot deny the presence of the lamp. The moment you light it up, it declares its presence. So Vishaya Avarana Virodhi Deepavat Tadeva Jnanam Sabdadi Vishaya Upajayate Tada Anena Sabdadi Vishaya Jnanakhya Prakashena Lingena Prakasatmakam Sattvam Bibridham Udbhutam iti vidyat janyat uta api sukhadilingena api janyat ityartha. So then what happens? He's explaining it's like this. The lamp cannot hide itself. Similarly, when the mind is engaging with any external subject matter, it's aware. Right now, you're listening to me. We are doing this satsanga, right? And you are reflecting on what is the definition of sattva, what is the linga of sattva, how it works. How it works? When it engages, the mind engages in any knowing activity, the sattvika aspect of this consciousness dominates. Or whenever you are having sukhakara vritti, like for example, you want to sit in a meditation, you want to wear good clothes, eat nice food, behave nicely. These are sukhakara vrittis, happiness oriented, ananda oriented. Then the sattvika thing manifests, and you know when your mind, when you are inclined in a reverse engineering, you try to understand in a reverse way. When your mind is inclined and behaves like a curious student, has interest to understand something, learn something, read something, you can be sure you are in a sattvika frame of mind. When you are not in a sattvika frame of mind, you may be a doer, you may be an enjoyer of the lower levels, you will not have the desire to read something, to understand something. You might find Gita classes very boring. But when the sattvika thing dominates, you will have an interest in, Sravana Manana Nididhyasana. That is why he's mentioning this is very, very important. He's trying to give a Vedantic interpretation. Similarly, whatever gives you sukha, not dukkha, not stress, it will avoid what will give you stress. And then you can recognize that yes, sattvic cheez hamare mein aa gaya. You can say the sattvic friend has entered my body mind complex, because your mind will say, okay, let me go to a temple. There's a mall, a friend calls you up, we are having a party at the food court, you come and join. And then, if you're in a tamas or rajas thing, you'll go and have a good time, and tamas, you'll go there and have fun and this and that. You're in a sattvic frame of mind, you will most likely tell him that you are having some urgent work to do or this and that, you will avoid. And then if you're in a rajasic frame of mind, you will work on a project which you have your sattvic frame of mind. Of course, that can be tamasic. If you're avoiding work, that is tamasic. But you have completed your work, you could actually go to the food court, but you turn sattvic because you have nicely finished your project, but you want to go sit in a temple, or you want to go to a riverside, or sit in your rooftop, garden and read something, or just spend time with your children. These are sattvika pravritis. You can see these are the symbols that that person is sattvika. You can watch a person and you can figure out what sort of a person he is. It becomes very clear. And I remember during my MA examination, there was a student, a friend of mine. He was from history department in Delhi University. So the last day examinations, I finished my papers, he finished his papers, and we were back in the libraries. So I was just reading, looking for something interesting to read because the exam is over. You just have to go home. Papers are over. MA examination. So I said, okay, let me read something interesting. But he was looking for journals. And I said, so exam ho gaya? He said, yes. And I said, what are you doing? He said, no, because that project is there. No, so I have to submit it. He's already working on that project. Okay. So his exam is over. He doesn't want to relax by reading anything philosophical or anything. He has already started working on a project. So that was a pending thing. He wants to start working on it. 10, 20 minutes after the last paper was over. And right now he's a principal secretary in Madhya Pradesh. So, he was all the time busy with his work. He was not interested in anything, always busy with his work. That is the Rajasic thing. Similarly, when you have finished your work, it's quite possible that you may have a sattvic thing. You are relaxed, you're saying, okay, you went to a marriage party or you had some serious business to do, you have over, you want to read Bhagavad Gita, you want to just do a bit of meditation. You can watch yourself and you can know Sukhatmaka or Jnanatmaka activity, desire is coming. That means that is sattvic thing which is dominating. That is the linga, that is the chinna. Iti janyat. So either Sukhatmaka or Jnanatmaka. These positions are there, means sattvikta is evident. Now let's go to Rajas. Lobha pravrittirarambha कर्मणाम असमः स्पृहा रजस्येतानि जायन्ते विवृद्धे भरतर्षभ lobha. That lipsa. I want to have a little more. I want to achieve more. Lobha pravritihi. And then, that you have some kind of engagement. इसको भी कर लेते हैं, वो भी कर लेते हैं. Arambha, and he will explain all that. These are all separate things. One is lobha, the other one is pravriti, another is arambha, and karmanam or samaha. And you do some work, he said, हाँ ये कर लेता हूँ, उसके बाद वो भी कर लूँगा. In highly rajasic state. And you find that sattvic rajas in many mothers. They feed their children. Actually, that is sattvic rajas. Otherwise, the sansara will come to an end. So I have seen many mothers, they will feed their children. The children, they are all having food. Children go to sleep and the husband goes. And what do these mothers used to do? The traditional mothers, they'll go to the kitchen. They'll put all these utensils and everything, put them in water. They'll clean the kitchen and do everything. Why are you doing all this? It's already 11 o'clock. Can't you go to sleep? Or tomorrow is a Thursday. So the kitchen has to be extremely clean. And they will do everything till 12 o'clock. They'll do everything. Then they will sleep. Otherwise, they can't sleep. They are feeling restless. That is they have so many works to do, that sattvic rajas thing. And spriha. Rajasya etani jayante. These are the symbolic representations, the symptoms that rajas is powerfully present. Rajas is not bad. If it leads to, it is dukhatmaka. But certain dukhas will also produce long-term sukhas. So you need some rajas. That is important. Lobha prabrityararambha karmanam asamah spriha rajasyetani jayante vibridhe bharatarshava. He's addressing him as Bharatarshava, saying that, look here, don't forget, you are a powerful fighter, you are a chakravarti or you're a king, and you have loads of this energy. Otherwise, you cannot sustain this kingdom. He's addressing him as that. Mahati dhanagame jayamane api anukshanam vardhamanah tadavilasa lobha. You have a lot of wealth. Okay, mahati dhanagame jayamane api anukshanam. And then it's, every moment you are kind of thinking, can I have more? Tadavilasu lobha. Let it also further increase. Swa vishaya prapti anivartya ichha vishesa iti yavat. Okay, lobha. So even if what you wanted, you have got it. You wanted to buy a golden chain for your wife or your daughter. You purchased it. You wanted a house, you have got it, but you want a little more, you want to do something else. That is lobha, ichha vishesha. So you get what you want, and then you have a little more desire, like children. You can see that with children. So they said, Papa, you give me a chocolate. Okay, you give him a chocolate, but you actually buy two. You just give the baby one. The baby will say, give me the other one as well. You can check the children. They'll exactly say, what about that? That also you give me. So that is ichha vishesha iti yavat. Prabhriti nirantaram prayatamanata. And that is what is prabhriti. Nirantaram prayatamanata. You know, so all the time, nirantara, there is no end to it. Okay, you are constantly trying to sort of engage yourself. Okay, so that is what is he's explaining. Is that is it's not negative, by the way, because you want to constantly make some efforts, and if you positively look at it, it's perseverance, adhyavashaya, you can also say that way, but you're constantly at it, and that is what is called prakriti and arambha. So you are starting, you have these new projects, you want to do this, right? And you can sarvarambha parityagi, that is the symbol of that sthita pragya earlier, and it will come again in future. What is arambha is you have some desire or some sankalpa in your mind. And once there is a desire or a kamana or vasana, then you do some vicharana whether you have some samarthya or not. If you don't have samarthya, you will try to have that samarthya. By hook or crook, you want to have it. So you will make some arrangements in your mind, your material tools, techniques, relations, whatever. You want to create that set of causal factors which will enable you to reach that goal, which you have already started nursing in your mind, that I want to have it. It can be a vidheya karma. You want to do a yaga, you want to do an orphanage, you can do some good thing, that is also arambha. It could be a nishiddha karma, something bad thing, but you have in your mind, I want to do that. You want to hurt someone, or you want to put somebody in problem. Different kind of people are there on earth, right? And it could be some people may have bad habits, so they will make some arrangement to have that. So all these are arambhas, and they are all starting with some sort of a sankalpa, some sort of a desire. And then what was the next word? Arambha karmanam bahubitya vaya ayasa karanam. So you may have a lot of money to be spent, a lot of efforts to be made. Kamya or nishiddha, it may be desirable or it may be a nishiddha karma. Okay, alaukika mahagruhadi vishayanam vyaparanam udyamaha, and you want to have a big alaukika thing. You want to do a lot of sadhana and all to have some power, or you want to have a big house or a big palace, or a, anything, that particular udyoga, that udyama, that is arambha. What is asama? Asama means sama is santi, asama is absence of that. Idam krutva idam karishyami. Acha, ye kar lunga, ye karne ke baad wo karunga. So there is no end to his restlessness. These are the negative aspects of rajas. It can be positive or negative. Depends on how you are looking at it. If there is a spiritual purpose behind it and you are balanced and well organized, you agree that I am doing it for this purpose and there is no lalasa, that's not a wrong thing. Because the sansara will come to a stop if you don't work, if you don't do karma yoga. So for karma yoga, rajasika sakti is required, but we need to put it in a right perspective. Asama idam krutva idam karishyami iti sankalpa pravaha anuparamaha, and there is no end, and there is restlessness. And a lot of people who are so restless and so much workaholic, they ruin their marriages, they ignore their children, they ignore their wife and their relatives, and they're successful, but they're very lonely because they never had time for this family. So the children treat him as a stranger in old age because they have not connected with their children. The children also ignore them. It happens with a lot of people. So that is also a dangerous thing. That is the negative aspect, negative outcome of too much of rajas. What is priha? Uchavacheshu, paradhaneshu, dushtamatreshu, yena kena upayena, upaditsa. So it's, somebody has more or less. Ucha avacha, more or less. which our generally is the the landscapes that we see, highlands or lowlands and stuff like that. But here he's saying somebody is very well placed and somebody is not so well. But you are constantly thinking, how can I be richer than that guy? How can I defeat him? Or I can have his wealth? How can I trap him and take over his wealth or try to control, that sort of thing. And that sort of also jealousy also becomes a friend of this sort of a mindset. So, yena kena upayana, in whichever way I want to have all the wealth, that is that kind of a desire. That is what is priha. But let me tell you, these are specific interpretations. Priha can also be very aspirational. Don't we say to our children, तुम्हारा पढ़ाई में स्पृहा नहीं है, तुम कैसे क्या करोगे? We depends on how we try to understand it. These are ways in which we are trying to understand how the rajas can dominate over us, and when it over dominates and we lose sight of the purushartha, four purusharthas, we get too much obsessed with artha for rajas. It can also be for dharma, but we sort of get possessed with this rajas. Then the problem starts, and that is what there is a warning sign. And therefore, certain negative interpretations are given, but you don't have to take it as all negative. It can also be positive. If it's balanced with elements of sattva, then it's very good. Okay. And then Lingani Janita Bharata Sabha. And then he's saying Rajasi Ragatmake. Raga, that Rajas is always Ragatmaka. And Rajyate Ananeti Ragaha. Ragatmake Vibridha Etani Ragatmakani Lingani Jayante He Bharata Sabha. So, my dear friend, you are a great king. But please understand, because you will have to do a lot of Rajasiya karmas, it is very important for you to recognize that these are the things, these are the chinnas, these are the symptoms. You got to recognize when are you losing balance in your life. You need a work-life balance, and these are some tricks where you need to understand where to stop. Now, I received a request from somebody to talk to some office people, and he has an opposite problem. He said because of these lockdowns, many of the corporates are underperforming because their staff have lost their ability to perform well. See, there is an opposite problem, right? Now they're all into tamas. They are overtly tamasic, alasya parayana, tandra parayana, right? And pramada, and kind of defeated by pramada, and therefore they are underperforming. They need to sort of raise their rajas. They have to be a little more dynamic, and so rajas is not all bad. You can also have a situation when the company is not doing well, students are not studying, professors are not working, and the politicians are lazy. Everybody becomes lazy. Then system also sort of collapses. Therefore, we need a proper balance. Now, let's go to now the prakasatmaka this. And the tamas thing, what it does. Aprakaso prabhuttischa pramado mohe evacha tamasitani jayante vibridhe kurunandana. Now he mentions him as a kurunandana. Because you see, the Kuru Bala, this whole thing, Raga, Dves, and everything. So he's saying, don't forget that you are free from tamas. You are from this whole Kuru Kula. And whenever you have these primordial loyalties, and then you have these jealousies and fights and enmities and everything. So you please remember that you are not, some of your friends are the most tamasic ones. And by the way, you guys lost your wife because you played you gambled, isn't it? Highly tamasic, isn't it? So he's kind of reminding him. Aprakaso aprabhritischa. Aprakasa means what? Jnana prabhritti viruddhatmaka manavritti. You don't have curiosity. You have viparita bhavana, either false snap judgments, or you have complete refusal to learn, to know. You are stuck with your opinions. You have a negative opinion about others. You have some sort of a viparita mukha, a kind of looking away from what is good and what is right and what is truthful. That sort of a thing. Aprakaso and aprabhritischa, and then complete absence of rajas, and absolutely no, it's complete slothfulness, lousy character. Aprabritischa. And pramada. Whatever kartavya is there, he will do the opposite of. So he has the opposite of kartavyata buddhi. And moha, blinded by it, evacha. These are the four: aprakasha, aprabriti, pramada, and moha. These are the symptoms that a person is overcome by tamas, evacha. Tamasya etani. Etani lingani jayante. These are the symptoms which will become dominant, and you need to understand that tamas aa gaya, and I have to be careful. Bibridhe, so parivardhate, they sort of expand. Aprakasah sati api upadesadu bodha karane sarvata bodha ayogyatvam. So it may be Bhagavad Gita right in front of him, he'll never open it or read. There may be he'll have this map in front of him while driving, but he'll drive on his own. He'll not check Google Map, and he may land up in a wrong destination, but he'll be arrogant. Don't argue with me. I know this is the back of my hand, and you know a lot of people do it. Aprabritischa satyapi agnihotram juhyat ityado prabriti karane janito bodhapi shastre sarvata tat prabriti ayogatvam. So if a person, like, let's now not go back to this old Brahmanical examples, but he's saying that Agnihotram Juhoti, that is a Veda Vakya, it is there. That early morning, a person, once he has a sun and hair is still dark, he should start Nitya Agnihotra, but nobody is doing it. So forget that example. There is a good health book in front of his table who says, wake up early in the morning, give yourself a bath, take a walk, take light food, all that, but he'll not do all that. So that sort of thing. What is correct? The medical prescription is that doctor has said you don't do this, he will do the opposite. That also can be a good example. So that is aprabriti. Prabriti or yogyatvam, he doesn't know. And what is pramadaha? Tatkala kartavyattvena praptasya arthasya anusandhana abhavaha. He knows that this is urgently something that I have to do. And I tell you, pramada affects a lot of us. We don't even recognize it. He's supposed to do it. He knows it, that I must apply, or there's a deadline, but he sort of delays it. He procrastinates. And I tell you, this is not going to affect anything. I was listening to one of those top-ranking Buddhist speakers from Japan, who is a professor of psychology, I'm not taking his name, in America. And he was speaking in one of the YouTubes, and he mentioned that inability to take decisive decisions in life and responsibility and procrastination. After becoming a Buddhist teacher, he had to work on it for 3 years under a coach to get rid of these deficiencies in him. Because these are purvajanma sanskaras, or childhood sanskaras, can follow you. So it's not that a person is spiritual or a person is a good officer or a professor will not have one negative aspect of rajas or tamas or sattva. No, he can have. The idea is, Bhagavad Gita says, recognize how many pet dogs and cats you have and which one of the pets are most likely to misbehave. Sometimes pets misbehave, right? And similarly, these gunas are like our pets and they might misbehave. And when they misbehave, we are in trouble because they make us dysfunctional. And we got to take care of it. And that is the alert he's saying. So even though he's saying that he will not do it, kartavyata bodha, he'll not do it. Anusandhana bhava, he has no curiosity to find out why he should do it. Moha eva cha moha nidra viparjayova. Moha is moha. It's simple. You're just deluded, you are slothful, you want to sleep. Or some people get into intoxication. Cha samuchay, so that moha eva cha. Eva is in order to emphasize the importance of these, and cha is samuchayarthe. Evakara vyabhichara varanartha. So vyabhichara, in order so that, when you say that pramada is there but tamas is not there, so he's saying no, definitely. If these things are there, then definitely tamas is there. Tamasyeva bibrade etani lingani jayante he kurunandana ataha etehi lingehi avyabhichari bhir vibridham tamo janyat ityartha. So whenever you see any of these things, ऐसे मत सोचना कि ज्ञान के विरुद्धात्मक प्रवृत्ति मेरे हो रहे हैं. I don't want to be have any activities. I am having pramada, I am having moha, but I am not tamasika. No. Any of these show up, you are definitely under the pressure of tamas. You got to analyze, you got to understand, you got to fight it. And how to fight it? Now we'll deal with it that tomorrow. So I'll stop here and we'll start from verse number 14 tomorrow. So with this, I put an end to the YouTube. If you have any questions, you can ask, or we can do the Santi Mantras.
Om Swami.